start. Some people will be joining, I'm sure, as we're going along. So you're all very welcome to this webinar, Getting into Engineering. Very pleased that we have John Southworth with us today, who's the author of this guide, also the principal of MPW London. And for those that were with us last week, we started last week with the Getting into Oxbridge webinar and the guide, and that is available now, actually, the recording of that webinar on the MPW YouTube channel, and I'll share that link during this morning as well in the chat box. We've been working with the Getting Into Guide series for over 20 years at MPW, and very pleased that we're having this webinar series at the moment. And as I said last week, for all of you that want to have the guides sent to you by post, we're very happy to do that. Just send us an email with your details, with your address. We can send you specific ones, like the engineering one from this morning, or we can send you the Oxbridge series, or actually we can send you the whole series of 12 publications, just for you to have as a reference for students and parents coming in. They're great guides, and they're used a lot in the UK. We don't just use them at MPW, but they're used throughout the UK at sixth form colleges. You can find them in libraries. I think I mentioned last week that on some of my travels over the last few years, I've seen them in British Council offices, which I was very pleased about. So, you know, we really like to see them being used as much as possible. They are authored by MPW staff, but they really do give you insights into every specific subject area. So it's engineering with us today. The next couple of Wednesdays, we've got some more coming up. We've got art and design next week, which will be very interesting, and that will be announcing our new partnership as a delivery centre with UAL, University of the Arts London. Very exciting news, and that's we're registering students for that now, in fact, but we will be launching that in September 22. So please do come back next Wednesday, register in advance for that one as well. And then the week after, we've got Getting Into Psychology, and then the last one of this particular series, we've got Getting Into Medicine. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, please do use the chat box. We'll have some time at the end to ask John some questions. And as I said, I'll put in the link in a few minutes for last week's webinar that you can watch, and I'll also put in the email address that you can send your address to, physical postal address, and then we'll get the publications sent out for you. I'll be monitoring microphones during the webinar just to make sure that we're all on mute, apart from John, of course, so that you'll all be able to hear him. So John, yeah, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us, and I will hand over to you.
Steve, thank you very much indeed, and a very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to be presenting to you today, and as Steve said, please do put anything in the chat or interrupt me as I'm going along. If you want to ask me a question, I'm very happy for that. Likewise, I mean, as you see, I'm the principal of our college at MPW in London, and if there are any questions you want to ask me about MPW London at the end, then of course I'm more than happy to answer those as well. As Steve said, just if you keep your microphones on mute just for the moment, just so we're not being interrupted. So just a little bit about me, just so you've got some credentials about my background. I think I'll start at the bottom. So, I mean, I started my career in the Army. So I was the officer in the British Army for 20 years. And at that time, I got my degree in engineering, got a master's in electronics and guided weapons, worked in the MOD for a number of years on a number of big electronics projects. Then I decided to go in a different direction and joined the Perth School in Cambridge, where I was there for 10 years. And whilst I was there, I taught design technology systems and control. So that was basically electronics and mechanics, building projects. Really enjoyed doing that. An interesting story just at that stage is that one of my students I was looking after, because he'd heard I'd been in the army, asked me if I used to fly missiles, or was it true that I used to fly missiles? So that being the case, I wouldn't have been here today. I have been the principal of a couple of colleges, one another London College, and now I've been principal MPW. I think this is my 6th year as principal here. And also I'm also currently the chair of the Independent School Association. That's an association of 578 schools currently, and hopefully by the end of my tenure as chair we'll be up to 600. So that's sort of a bit of background about me. So hopefully that gives me a little bit of the right to talk about engineering from sort of a position of some knowledge, but certainly not the font of all of it. So what is engineering? It's a very, very broad question, isn't it? But I put it down there, and this is quite, I think, a good sort of statement about it. The practical application of maths, science and technology to design and create machines, processes and structures. So that in broad brush terms is what engineering is all about. So it is the desire of somebody to want to create something, but also a lot of that is all about reverse engineering. So taking things to pieces and see how they work, and then trying to rebuild them in a slightly better way. Certainly my interest in engineering was sparked, I think, from when I was probably in my sort of 7 or 8 years old, and I remember sort of taking to pieces an old lawnmower and looking at the little internal combustion engine on top of it, and taking it to pieces, cleaning it all, putting it back together again, and suddenly it worked rather more efficiently and rather with less noise and less smoke. And then as I moved on, sort of, at 17, when I got my driving license, my mother, bless her when she was alive, would always remind me about me having the car engine on the breakfast table, and it was there for about 2 weeks. I had an old Morris Minor, which was about, at the time, and this was going back about over 40 years. Even at that stage, that Morris Minor was 25 or 30 years old, and I took the engine out and completely rebuilt it from first principles and put it back in the car, and that was my first car. So I suppose engineering was something which has been ingrained in me from an early age, in that I enjoyed looking at things, seeing how things worked, and then disassembling them, and then trying to fix them. I used to like playing with my Hornby train set. I used to do Meccano, used to do Lego, mini bricks for those people who are old enough to remember those things. So lots of things that you do that sort of creates that sort of aura of engineering. So Bath University comes up with really nice definition on their website, a disciplined, dedicated to problem solving. And then it gives a few other things. So just read that if you can for a moment. And I think that gives you an insight into where engineering and technology is really moving in the world today. I always, think about what we create these days. We create art, we create music, but actually we create things, and things are created through engineering and technology. They're not created through anything else. Chemistry is chemistry. It doesn't really change. Physics is physics. It doesn't change. But technology is something that is evolving on a daily basis. So, as I said, scientists study the world as it is. Engineers create the world that has never been. And again, I think that's quite a nice definition to sort of try and show you that this is something which is about evolution and about creation. So why should you study engineering? Well, I'm hoping I've given you a little bit of flavour about why I did it and why I was so excited about doing so. And I hope that the young people or the agents on will be able to engender in those young people that this is a really fun thing to do. As I say, it's all around us. It's a great subject. I mean, it's interesting, it's fascinating. I love it. It's all about innovation. It's about being creative. And what we are trying to do as engineers and as technologists is to future-proof the world. We're looking not just about today and tomorrow, but engineers are looking at things 10, 20, 30, 40 years in advance. When you sort of watch things like Star Trek or that kind of thing, you sort of think, my God, is that ever possible that we're going to have starships like that? Are we going to be able to have transporter beams and all the rest of it? Well, these are creationists, I suppose, who are having ideas of what it could be in the future. And actually, these are reality, that in 30, 40 years' time, yes, we could have spaceships out in space, orbiting the globe and going further afield rather faster than doing now. That is all about being an engineer, being a technologist. So, as I put there, an engineer is a dreamer. I have a dream. Let's hope that those of you who want to be engineers have that dream and then can build that up to fruition. You are innovators. You are inventors. I mean, the best inventors in the world have been invariably engineers, technologists. It's all about also doing research, because there's no point inventing something that's already been invented. No point going back to, oh, I've just invented the wheel. Well, fantastic. The wheel was invented many thousands and thousands of years ago. Let's look at doing research, looking at what's happened in the past, and then building on that basis and that great basis we have in the world at the moment to solve problems and then create something which is new and special. So this is central, as I said, to everything in the world, in my view. And I know some of you might disagree with it, but I would challenge maybe now those who are listening. Can any of you think of something in the world today that has not got some form of engineering in it? Is there anything in this world that has been created in some way that has not got some form of engineering or science or technology which has come into the basis of that thing in its being? And if anybody can come up with something, then I'm very happy to put it in the chat if you've got an idea, and we can perhaps just discuss it later. So there are a huge range of engineering types. And the key thing for any of you going into engineering or discussing engineering with students is to try and direct them into something that really interests them. Now, you can do, and I did, a general engineering degree. So I did my degree at Leicester University. At the time, it was a general engineering degree, and I specialised in electronics and communications in my final year. Now, there are courses like that, and I think they are very commendable. But many students will already have a good idea of which direction they want to go in. And that being the case, they need to make sure that whatever direction they're thinking about going in, they've studied the right subjects to get into that particular course. So looking down this list of possible engineering courses, for example, if you're going to do something to do with energy or petroleum, then chemistry is probably going to be a key component of your studies. If you're going to do aerospace, or you're going to do space, actually physics and astronomy might be something to do with the study of those at engineering. But maths, and more maths. And if in doubt, study a bit more maths. I'm afraid that mathematics forms the basis of almost every single university degree course. And that is absolutely essential. It's unhelpful, I think, when some engineers say, oh yeah, since I've become an engineer, since I'm maybe I only use 10% of the maths I learned at school or college. Unhelpful comments, but actually probably the 10% they use is probably based on the other 90% that they studied. they couldn't use that 10% without the previous 90% that was in their back pocket. And I said most universities will require maths as being the core of what you do, and probably physics. Of course, it could be chemistry if you were doing chemical engineering or something like that. And I've come across that. Then it's the third subject. What could you study as your third subject? And I think this is where it opens up a whole range of possibilities. If you are going to go down the route of, say, architecture, then yes, you are going to need to do some form of creative art. You've got to have a 3D visual imagery. And actually, I think just for doing any engineering course, I think a creative art alongside maths and physics is incredibly useful. And there's some brilliant art involved in maths and physics anyway. There's lots of creations that go on in art and in maths and physics that are also based on things that happen in nature, in art as well. Clearly, you're going to go down the chemical route in some way. You need chemistry or biomed. Another thing, a language. And in language, I include not only a modern foreign language, but also computer science, which is also a language. It's just a language of maths. So if you are going to go into engineering and you have a language, let's say a modern foreign language, that also makes you international, very internationally employable, and can be a great asset when you're talking to clients around the world for things that you might create and be inventors of. But the computer science can be incredibly useful if you go down some kind of computer engineering degree, and that is something that you should also consider. There is this big debate, is there not, about further maths and whether that is actually essential or not for engineering courses. Now, there are some courses at Cambridge and at Imperial, for example, where having further maths would be seen as advantageous, but it is not necessarily essential. And in all those cases, what I would say to young people and to agents is do speak to the admissions tutors of these universities to make sure that you ask them whether they would prefer further maths or not. Now, it's quite difficult for universities to insist on further mathematics because so many institutions, schools and colleges do not offer it as a subject. We do at MPW, and some students do that alongside maths and sometimes two other subjects. That would be rare, but it is possible. Most students would do maths, further maths and physics, or maths, further maths and chemistry. So, top universities for engineering courses. I mean, I've got some favourites. I mean, Imperial, which is just around the corner from MPW here in London, is one of the best places, I think, to go and study. It really is hands-on engineering from day one, as is Southampton. Gone up in the ratings for university sort of success rate and for student feedback, positive feedback. Really, really good places to aim for, but they are all going to be asking for a sort of A star, AA at A level for entry. Oxbridge, although we have had students who've gone to Oxbridge for engineering, and I'm sure you'll have some of your students who will be interested in that, and the talk that we had last week from Matt Carmody would have given you some insight into just to Oxbridge applications. But just a word of warning, if you go to Cambridge for engineering, you will spend the first 2 years really doing very, very hard mathematics. So you do need to be absolutely top of your game for mathematics. Oxford, maybe not quite so full on mathematics, but certainly the first year will be mathematics. And that will be the same at all universities. All universities need to bring students up to the same level of mathematics, because you can't do much of what is on an engineering course unless you have that background in mathematics. It is going to be very tricky for you to succeed on those courses. So, how do you go about choosing those universities? Well, First and foremost, it's not actually about choosing the university. First and foremost, as I said earlier on today, it is about choosing your course. That is the most essential thing. Choose the course that you want to do. Choose the course that is going to make you get out of bed on a daily basis to go into university. When I was at university, I was on a course that I had lectures at 9 o'clock every morning, lectures 9 till 1 most days, and then in the afternoons we were in the labs doing practical work. I shared a house with a historian, an economist, and a geographer, and they had 3 lectures a week each. And so most mornings they were still in bed when I was up and about and going into university. And I think it's, that is where the difference is. Engineers, doctors, lawyers are in university every day in lectures, doing study and doing practical work. So you're in a good field of people when you go onto this type of course. But choose the type of course you want to do first. Then do your research on which universities offer that type of course. It could be that that university that you wanted to go to, you had an aspiration to go to, offers the course you want to go on. And actually, when you look at the detail of the course content, you are really interested in all those bits of that course. So that's crucial. When you've then decided that you've got the type of course you want to do, you've got a range of universities, what I then strongly suggest you do is you have an aspirational choice. So that's a university that maybe is offering A-star, AA, or AAA. So your Imperials, your Southamptons, your Warwicks, your Bath, Bristol, Exeter. Then have a couple of choices which are, what I'd say, sensible choices. So choices which are bang on to what your predicted grades are, or just above your predicted grades. And then maybe have a couple of backup choices. So if you're predicted 3 Bs, have an aspirational choice, which may be 3 As, have 2 sensible choices that might be ABB or BBB, and then have a couple that are BBC or BCC. So you've got a whole range of choices. In that way, you are not punching above your weight. You are a little bit, but not too much. It means that you will get offers because engineers are in short supply. So there are plenty of places to study university. So get your offers in. And if you can get your application through for university as early as possible, and in MPW we try and get all those applications done by the end of November, that means you've got plenty of time to get the offers to come in. And most of my students have a lot of their offers before Christmas. That gives you a really great sense of achievement. And also, when you come back in the new year, gives you something to work towards as you do your studies and aim to get the top grades in whatever examinations you're doing. And I put here attend, in brackets, virtual open days. There are still some universities running virtual open days, but the more universities you can go and visit, the better. So you get a good feel of what the departments are like. Are they really, have they got lots of the modern equipment, got modern places to study? Do they have lecturers who are energetic and wanting to really have a love of their subject and push it forward, and it will engage with you? So those things are quite crucial. So if you can go and attend open days, do so as quickly as you possibly can. So people often ask me about personal statements and when should they start them? When should they get them going? Well, clearly, if you are in year 12 now, or you've got students in year 12, start now. Start to put together the straw man sort of approach of your personal statement. At MPW, we use a program, a system called Unifrog, and it allows you to start adding things onto your profile. And actually, the key thing about personal statements is to write everything down you possibly can. Doesn't matter if it's too long, because you can always shorten it down later on. But you need to make it personal. It's got to come across to an admissions tutor as why is this young person applying to my university to do this particular engineering course? What is making them stand out when I read this personal statement? Well, they want to hear that you've got a love of science, maths and science. So you need to put that right at the beginning about what makes you spark in terms of maths and science. What have you done in terms of some practical engineering? What have you done in terms of a bit of reverse engineering, as I said, talking about taking a car to pieces or taking computer pieces or building your own computer? Talk about it. Read articles about engineering. There are plenty of articles online. There's plenty of YouTube videos. There's plenty of content that you can look at. Demonstrate that you have read the course content. So if you are applying for electrical engineering, make sure that the things you are talking about in your personal statement also relate to what might be studied on the course. Admission tutors immediately, if they see a student who has put something down which has been studied on the course, will say, they clearly have read what we're doing at this course and they have an interest in it. So try and match up your personal statement with what is actually going to be taught on the course, certainly taught in the course in the first year. Demonstrate as an inquiring mind. So you are wanting to look into the future, you are wanting to invent and to create, you are wanting to look and see how things work. Again, when I was younger, there was a great publication that came out every week called How Things Work. And eventually it created 7 volumes of material about how things work. And it was fascinating to read about all these things and then to actually go and do it yourself, go and find something and take it to pieces and see how it worked. Include any relevant work experience. Work experience I know is difficult to come by. And over the last couple of years, it's been almost impossible. But there are plenty of institutions now who are offering online work experience. But just going to work in a small company, a small engineering company, building widgets. If you go into a company that produces widgets, whatever that widget might be, they're going to have some machinery. They're going to have a production line, probably. They're going to have a business model. They're going to have a production line. They're going to have inputs and outputs, materials coming in and going out, and feedback. All that's about engineering. So go and find a job in any company like that, even a small company, and that will give you a real insight into what engineering companies do. And again, that could give you a little bit of insight about what you might want to do in your future as an engineer. The good thing about doing work experience is that all work experience is a positive experience. Even if you go into an engineering company and you think, I really don't want to do this type of engineering, this is not for me, take that as a positive. You can cross that off your list and move on to something else. But you can't go wrong without going on lots of work experience. Make the most of the summer holidays especially. There are a number of courses called Head Start courses that are run at UK universities. These are brilliant. They are a fantastic opportunity to go and mix with lots of other young people who are aspiring engineers and work on projects with university staff in the summer. They normally run for about 3, 4, 5 days. There's courses down, I think, at Bristol and Exeter, where they are running courses to make a solar-powered vehicle or to look at other ways of creating renewable energy. Renewable energy clearly at the moment is going to be a really, really powerful thing to talk about in personal statements, because that is where the world is going to have to go. It's going to have to go to wind, solar, wave power, nuclear power as oil and gas reserves run out, and as we are being told quite rightly to stop using oil and gas because of the impact on the environment. So these are key things that are happening in engineering courses now. And if you have done any practical work, and I had a student in the past who I supported because he was making a small electronic device using a small microprocessor and creating a little object that moved and ran along the floor. And he built that from first principles, and he'd programmed it from first principles. So he put that in his personal statement. He's now in his 4th year Imperial, finishing his electrical engineering course, because again, he demonstrated this love of engineering and building something. One word of caution, though. Within your statements, always ask yourself the question after any statement or sentence you make, so what? So I have built an Arduino-based computer program. So what? And because of this, I've learned how to program in C#. I have also added onto this system an electronic device which counts the number of nuts and bolts going past on a conveyor belt. So you've tried to tease out what you're doing by having said a particular statement. And hopefully, if you keep saying so what to every statement, eventually you'll run out of so what, well, there's no further answer. And that's where you should be. Now, you might then have 5 sentences where you start off with 1. Then you can start to concertina those sentences together to make a far more meaningful statement that might be 2 sentences rather than 5. So personal statements, I said make them personal. But here's an example of one that I helped the young man I mentioned, who's now Imperial. I supported him in his application and helped him with his personal statement and wrote his reference for him. And he said here, look, curiosity let me discover an alternative, more interesting way of using my Android phone. So straight away, as a missions tutor, they are thinking, oh, they're doing something which is quite novel here. And he looked into the backdoor system of how it worked, the operating kernel. And he saw lots and lots of code. And he thought, what can I do with that? So he then started to make something. And he wanted to make a gift for a friend. And he made a 3x3 LED cube. An LED is light emitting diodes, controlled by an Arduino. I mean, it's a really good thing. And electric microphone, that is a very, very small microphone. And what he was doing is he was making the LEDs in this cube light up in different ways, depending on the noise that was coming in. So you imagine like a disco light sometimes, you get different bass beats, treble beats, different noises, and different lights might flash up. Well, that's the kind of thing he was doing. And then he talked about some problem solving he did. He added a decoupling capacitor. Really, really good. That's high level stuff that I would teach if I was teaching this at A level. But he wasn't doing an A level in sort of electronics or engineering, but he was doing it by himself. So he found this enjoyable, and it also allowed him to help his father sort of sort out a system in his father's factory. So a really, excuse me, a really interesting and engaging personal statement to start off with. And here's another one. He started researching the course because of a laptop that was badly damaged. So he decided to take it to pieces and have a look at it and see what he could do with it. And then he started to help his friends. So again, if you read this one, and you can obviously have a copy of my presentation, so if you want to read these in slower time. But what this student was saying is that he was using his time wisely to go about investigating things, and he enjoyed learning about waves and characteristics of waves. He wanted to manipulate sort of radio wave transmitted by conventional roads to control household appliances using an infrared blaster. Wow. He's using existing technology to support things in his own household. And he came from a slightly different background, and he used some of his knowledge and love of engineering to make a difference. And again, I think a personal statement like that with an admissions tutor will instantly grab their attention. I mentioned earlier work experience. I said, whilst it's not essential, it is very, very useful. But, and I said to you earlier, work for any type of engineering company, but it's perhaps one option you could look at, there are many university courses now that do a gap year, and you do a gap year working in industry, and it can be in the UK or it can be abroad. And I would certainly recommend and commend that to you as being a way of really, again, getting into an industry, finding out what it's like to work with, and then that can influence maybe your third university and the kind of project you do. I've got plenty of examples of students who did a course like this, did a year in industry, and they did so well in that year in industry that they were guaranteed a job with that company when they finished their final year. And during their final year, not only doing their project, but their project was influenced by the company that they did their placement with. But it also meant that during their holidays in that final year, they also did a bit of work for that company. And then, having finished their degree, they had a job waiting for them, and they'd already done some research work regarding that company. So that is a really, really useful thing to do, and I would certainly commend that to you. I would also commend to you taking a gap year. I think that taking a gap year between finishing your examinations and going to university is a really, really good thing to do. And again, I encourage my students to do that, because if you're not quite sure which engineering route you want to go in, you can then go and work with a company for a number of months to get some experience. It also gives you the chance to go and see a lot of different types of engineering establishments, so you can have a really then firm idea of what you want to do. But actually just going around and seeing the world of work, having some time to investigate, doing some reverse engineering, could make a big difference to how you write your personal statement in the following year. So certainly a gap year is something I would commend to you as well. I put on the screen here a little booklet that Steve mentioned earlier. So here it is. Here's a real live copy of it. I was very lucky to co-author that with one of my other colleagues called James Barton. I think this is it's an excellent book. Well, I would say that, wouldn't I? But get a copy. Steve and the team will send you out copies if you want them. But hopefully, in reading that book, it will give you again a bit more insight into what it is, what it's all about, into getting into engineering courses. And so, with no further ado, that's me done. That's probably taken me 35 minutes or something. I hope that's been useful, and of course I'm very happy to take any questions from any of you. I hope that's been of use to you. Steve.
Thanks, John. Thank you so much. That was, very, very useful, very, very insightful. Lots of good advice coming from that. I have questions. I always have questions about all sorts of things, in particular engineering, because it is just so fascinating, I think. And we'll see if some more questions come through. We've got about 10 minutes or so, so if anybody wants to put questions into the chat box, then please do. But my question is from one of your earlier slides about you talking about you getting into engineering, if you like. So you liked solving problems, and you'd call yourself a bit of a dreamer, which I think is a great word to describe anyone, in fact. But what, for people on this webinar, and other questions that we've had sent to us and other times, at which stage do you think someone would know they were interested in engineering? I mean, they're children, aren't they? Is it coming from their parents? Do they know at a certain age? Do you think that this is a good career choice for them?
Yeah, it's actually quite a difficult question to answer. I mean, I certainly knew that I wanted to do something to do with making things and building things, literally from when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. That was I didn't know it was engineering at that stage. I just knew that I had an ability to do things practically. I like working with wood. I like fiddling with things and building things and taking to pieces. I like doing Meccano and that kind of thing. So there's lots of technology at that age. I didn't know at that stage it was called technology. I didn't know it was called engineering. And then obviously I then decided to join the army. I decided about 13, that's where my first career was going to be. But along all that lines, I was still doing lots of engineering things. So even in the army, I was working in the engineering field. So I suppose in hindsight, having looked back on my career, although I loved my 20 years in the army, I've loved my 22 years now in education. Perhaps if I look back in hindsight, perhaps I should have actually gone into engineering right from the outset rather than any of those things. And would I have been as fulfilled as I am now? Would it have been the right career choice? Who knows? I mean, if you could relive your life again, we'd all change some things. But I think if you have within you an interest in things and how things work, then to me, that would suggest that you've probably got an interest in some form of engineering or technology future. So it's all about wanting to know how things work. So as you go down the road, or you go into a building, or you go into someone's house and you see an object and you think, oh, that's interesting, I've not seen that before. How does that work? How do they design that? How do they make that? What's inside it? There's an amazing building there. Okay, that's a structure. It's been designed by an architect, but actually there's a lot of engineering in it. What are the engineering concepts behind it? Smart materials, for example, which are in use now. So starting to show an interest in all those things. And I must say, I think I did that from an early age. It was always, how does that work? How does that work? What's that, mum? What's that, dad? It was all question, question, question. So I think if you are questioning things, then I think you've got an inquiring mind. And if you, having got an inquiring mind, if you can then think, actually, I can think of a way to solve that problem, I can think of a way of making that better, then you are in effect becoming a creator, hopefully an engineer of the future.
Right. Okay. No, that's very good. Yeah, and I think that is very good advice. There's a practical question that's come in from Ahmed, one of the people on the webinar today. Is photography a good third subject for someone who wants to study electrical engineering alongside maths and physics?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said earlier, I think having a creative art can add such a wealth of background, experience and knowledge to any engineering degree. By doing photography, you are also, no doubt, is it Ahmed, who's asking the question? You're probably using a bit of computer software, because you're probably doing dry photography, using things like Photoshop. So you're manipulating images, you're manipulating photographs. So you're using a computer program to do things. That's a bit of engineering. You're obviously you're doing wet photography. So you're using chemicals to develop processes, using different times and speeds on your camera. So you again, take the camera to pieces, learn how the lenses work. The lenses are physics. The way the aperture holes work is mathematics, and all the images becomes into mathematics. So there's engineering in everything you do to do with photography. Every single aspect of it involves some form of engineering. But as I said, to have this visual knowledge as an engineer, something that I don't think I have, but having that ability to visualize things in 3 dimensions, see things from different perspectives, I think adds a really powerful string to your bow in becoming an engineer, because you are not only got the science and maths background, but you can see things visually as well. So if you're going to design something as an engineer, actually, we can design things that work and look very practical, but actually they don't look very nice. They don't look very good. So think about things like an iPhone, as an example, or an Android phone. They look beautiful. They are beautiful pieces of engineering technology, but they are designed by a whole range of people, including those people who've got creative arts. So I think, yes, photography or any creative art alongside maths and science, maths and physics, absolutely commend you to carry on doing it. Very, very exciting for you.
Yeah, good. Thanks, John. I think that's a great answer, actually, and it links a bit to the next question in some ways. So engineering, photography, it's about your creative side, isn't it? But what about the academics? So some of the universities that you mentioned, Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, I mean, these are top universities in the world, right? So the academic side of the studies is going to be really difficult. So how are the students supported more, the more creative ones that might not be, well, if they're not that academic, they're not going to get into Oxford and Cambridge and Imperial in the first place, are they? I don't suppose.
No, I mean, that's the point. I mean, if you want to go to one of those top universities, then you are going to have the academic credentials. You are going to have the A star, that type of grade at A level, or the equivalent in IB or pre-U, whatever it might be. And probably behind that, a very good sort of range of very good quality GCSE schools. So they are competitive. They are the best universities in the world. They're in the top 10 universities in the world. So if you're applying for those places, you are applying to be in the top 1% or less of all candidates across the globe. So put it into perspective, it's not easy to get into, but it's not for everybody. And I think that's why I'd say to you is the course is far more important, not the university. Find the course that suits you. And actually some courses that are available at the moment, which are incredibly exciting, really innovative courses, are actually only take place at specific universities, which are not even on the list that I gave you earlier. So there will be very good courses, maybe run at the University of Hertfordshire or Brighton or Sussex, that will be amazing, amazing courses, but actually will not perhaps appear on your radar as being a Russell Group university or a top tier university. But if that's the course you want to do, and that's the course that they're running, it's probably because they are the experts in that field, and that is actually the best place for you to go to. But again, it's all about doing research, finding out from what the universities do, what their success rate is in going on to other careers and other things beyond university. All I can say to you is, if you're in doubt, contact the admissions tutor of that university and ask them the question. How many of your students go on to their first choice jobs? How many people go into employment after they finish their university course on this particular degree course? And they should have that information for you.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. And we try in the international team to emphasize that when we have parents and students asking us the questions, that it's actually the course, not the university. It's a tricky one though, because for decades, and they know Oxbridge, right? They know Imperial, they know Bristol, but when you break it down and look specifically at the universities that are top ranked for engineering, some of the ones that you mentioned, Southampton, I think Strathclyde as well is also good for engineering. These university brands might not have been heard about actually overseas. So it's a case really of educating them, isn't it? And just making them aware that this might actually be the right degree program for you or your children.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Steve. I mean, the key thing here is that it's not the university, it's the course. And you need to do some research. I mean, and actually doing the research is all part of being a good degree student anyway, because degrees studies are about doing research. So do the research early on, it will pay dividends. Because as I said to you before, what is key is that you want to get out of bed every day when you're at university to go and take part in your course and enjoy it. And you really want to engage in it and be the very best you can on that course. If you are on the wrong course, even if you are Imperial or Southampton or Oxbridge, if you're on the wrong course, you won't enjoy it. You won't gain the benefit of all the other things that universities got to offer because you'll be unhappy on your course. And ultimately, you could drop out of it. Now, that's the disaster you don't want to happen. So the research you do at the beginning will pay dividends. So I do implore you to do that, first of all.
Good. Thank you. I've got a very specific question that's come in. I don't know if you know the answer to this one, about someone that wants to be involved in data mining. Which engineering degree can he or she partake in?
I mean, data mining, I think you're probably looking at more of a computer science degree rather than an engineering, but certainly something to do with computing engineering is going to be the way ahead, I'd have thought, for that. I'm afraid I have to say I don't have any knowledge of data mining degree courses. But again, if you look on the UCAS website, they will be able to give you a list of universities that run that type of course. Again, give the admissions tutors a ring. I mean, that's such a specific area, and fantastic. You've already got an interest in something which is so sort of narrow in some way. But call up an admissions tutor and ask them some questions about what they're studying and what background you need. Admissions tutors love talking to young people. They much prefer to talk to you than me. Because they want you to come and go on their course and enjoy it. So actually, if they can actually either convince you that that course is the right course for you, or actually having spoken to them, you think this is not the right course for me, again, those are both positive outcomes for both you and the admissions tutor. Because clearly they don't want you going on that course if it's the wrong course for you. And obviously they would like to get the top students on those courses. So if you're a really top student, that's what you want to do. Make some phone calls, do some research, and hopefully you'll find the right course for you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. I think I've got one more question. I don't think anything else has come in. Just going back to what you were saying about work experience. And of course, work experience, for our international students, they can do that in their home countries as well. Yep. And you mentioned the value. Actually, it might even be in the book. It mentions the value of that for the personal statement. But do the universities, do they look at this as something like an added value? It makes the student more rounded, not just on the personal statement, but they're actually looking for something like that when they receive applications.
Again, I suppose in some respects, it depends on what course and what university you're applying for. An Oxford application, they're not interested in work experience. They are just interested in your ability at maths and science. That's it. That's the focus. They're not worried about the fact you've represented your country at curling, or you happen to be a particularly good golfer or something. They're not interested in that. But some of the other universities, yes. I mean, the normal Russell universities, they would like to see you've got a few more strings to your bow. It doesn't have to be work experience. It could be some other things you've done. I mean, and they will all know at the moment that getting work experience is particularly difficult because companies and organisations are not wanting at the moment lots of people coming in when there's still a pandemic going on in the world. So they do fully understand that you would not be able to get it. But I think what it would give you, though, is rather than giving you something to add on to your personal statement, which you should do if you've done it, what it will give you, though, is probably a more rounded knowledge of what engineering is about and what you really want to do. And so by doing the work experience, it will allow you to write more freely in your personal statement of why you want to do engineering and what aspects of engineering interest you. So I would always say, if you get the opportunity, go and do some work experience, because it will not do any harm at all.
Great. Thanks, John. One question did just come in about offering full-time scholarships for international students, particularly from Africa. Well, I could answer that actually, because we do have a principal scholarship that John oversees at MPW London and our other colleges. It's not a full scholarship, but we do encourage very good candidates to get in touch with us. And then we screen those from the international team, and then we forward them to John, and he interviews one or two of them. So yeah, if you've got any outstanding candidates in any of the subject areas that we teach at MPW, then we would always be very keen to hear from you. Sorry, John, I thought I'd just take that one.
No, that's fine. I mean, I agree entirely. Great.
Well, I think we are done. That was really, really useful. I hope that the people on the webinar enjoyed that and got some good insights. John, thank you so much for your time with us this morning.
My pleasure. As I said, if there's anything that anybody wants to know about anything else about engineering or about MPW and about courses we study and how we support you to get into engineering, then please either send me a message or contact Steve, the international team, and we'd be delighted to give you some further insights and any specifics you'd like to ask. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Great, thank you. And I popped the international at mpw.ac.uk in the chat box. I'm just going to put the YouTube link there now. That's from last week's session, Getting into Oxford and Cambridge. The author of that book is also at MPW London. He's one of John's head of faculty. That was Matt from last week. So please do have a look at that. And this webinar as well will be there in a day or so as well for you to look at. So thanks very much everyone for joining us this morning. Have a great day or evening wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
All the best. Bye.